It is well known that World War II began on September 1st, 1939. However, for the Chinese people in Asia, they had already been fighting a seemingly hopeless war for 8 consecutive years. So today, we turn our focus to China to take a detailed look at the story of Chinese people during the Second World War. In 1905, Japan defeated terrorist Russia in Russo-Japanese War and, through the Treaty of Portsmouth, inherited Russia's interest in southern northeast China. This includes control over the South Manchuria Railway and right to the station troops along the railway. After 1905, under the pretext of protecting the South Manchuria Railway, Japan established the Guangdong Governor-General's Office in northeast China and stationed the troops there, later known as the Guangdong Army. This force was long stationed in Lushun, Dalian, and along the railway lines, gradually becoming the vanguard of Japanese aggression against China. Japan used treaty rights as an excuse, but constantly overstepped boundaries, incrementally infiltrating and controlling the political and the economic lifelines of northeast China. In the 1920s, China's northeast region was ruled by the warlord Zhang Zuolin. Zhang Zuolin was born on March 19, 1875, in Haicheng County, Fengtian Province. He came from a poor peasant family, participated in the First Sino-Japanese War, later joined bandits, and in 1902 was recruited by the Qing government as an officer. After the outbreak of 1911 revolution, he was appointed by Yuan Shikai as a commander of the 27th Division of the Fengtian Army. Following Yuan Shikai's death in 1960, China plunged into a period of warlord conflicts. At that time, the Beiyang warlord split into 3 major factions: the Anhui, Zhili, and the Fengtian cliques. In February 1916, Zhang Zuolin became the military governor and the civil governor of Fengtian. In August 1919, with Japanese assistance, he seized the military and administrative power in Jilin, becoming the undisputed leader of Fengtian clique of Beiyang warlords and dominant the king of the northeast. Although he received substantial funding from the Japanese, his strategy was neither outright resistance nor complete submission to Japan. Instead, he sought balance among Japan, Russia, and other internal Chinese forces, utilizing Japanese funds and technology to develop his own strengths while resisting excessive Japanese interference in his sovereignty and internal affairs as much as possible. In April 1927, Tanaka Kiichi became the 26th Prime Minister of Japan. After unsuccessfully threatening Zhang to cede more interest in Northeast China, he concluded that Fengtian government had failed to meet all of Japan's demands in Manchuria and Mongolia regarding railway construction, mining, factory establishment, land leases, and immigration, and had shown resistance. This was intolerable to the Japanese cabinet. The Japanese Guangdong Army determined that the anti-Japanese demonstration by the people of Northeast China were incited by Zhang Zuolin, developing a deep hatred for him. On April 5, 1928, Chiang Kai-shek held a pledge-taking ceremony in Xuzhou to launch the second Northern expedition against the old Northern warlords led by Zhang Zuolin, aiming to expand his own territory. He quickly defeated the Fengtian forces in Jinan. At this point, the Japanese government decided to intervene militarily, creating the shocking Jinan incident, also known as the May 3rd massacre, to prevent British and American influence from expanding northward. On May 3rd, 1928, Japanese launched an attack against the National Revolutionary Army in Jinan, Shandong Province. Due to Chiang Kai-shek's consistent compromise and retreat and his order of non-resistance, a large number of Chinese soldiers and civilians were massacred. When National Revolutionary Army occupied Jinan, Japanese imperialists used the pretext of protecting Japanese nationals to send troops in interference. On May 3rd, 1928, they brutally killed Cai Gongshi, the special negotiator of national government for Shandong, and 16 other diplomatic personnel, then forcibly occupied the entire city, wantonly killing 6,123 Chinese soldiers and civilians. This aroused immense indignation among the Chinese people and was also condemned by the world opinion. The United States, Britain, and other countries, based on their interest in China, also pursued Japan. On February 28, 1929, the Japanese government reached an agreement with Kuomintang government and withdrew its troops from Jinan. In June 1928, as the war situation is getting worse, Zhang Zuolin decided to return to Northeast China by train. Guangdong Army Staff Officer Colonel Daisaku Kawamoto had already planned a detailed assassination plan for him, placing explosives under a bridge near Huanggutun railway station, about 1.5 kilometers from Shenyang. At 5:23 a.m. on June 4th, as Zhang Zuolin's special train entered the bridge tunnel, Guangdong Army Captain Tetsunan Higashikuni pressed the detonate. With a huge explosion, Zhang's special carriage was blown apart, leaving only the underframe. Zhang Zuolin was thrown over 10 meters away with his throat torn. Liu Shangqing, the governor of Fengtian, rushed to the scene upon hearing the news and organized the rescue efforts. By the time Zhang was taken to the Marshal Zhang's mansion in Shenyang, he was on the verge of death. Military doctor failed to save him, and he died around 9:30 a.m. Before his death, Zhang Zuolin said to Lady Lu, "Tell Xiao Liu to put the country first and do his best. This worthless body of mine is nothing. Tell Xiao Liu to return Shenyang quickly." He then died at the age of 54. It is important to note that killing Zhang Zuolin was not Tanaka Kiichi's idea, but an independent action by the Guangdong Army, because killing Zhang Zuolin meaning to forcing the entire Fengtian clique to against Japan, leaving no path other than forcibly occupying Northeast China. This incident caused great controversy with the Japanese government, which concluded an investigation for over a year but hastily concluded the case, stating the Kwantung Army was not involved. This clearly demonstrated the government's failure to control the military and push Japan farther down the path of militarism. To prevent the Japanese army from taking advantage of the situation, the Fengtian authorities decided to keep Zhang Zuoling's death secret. They issued a public statement saying the commander sustained minor injuries and is in good spirits. At the same time, the Fengtian authorities imposed a citywide curfew to stabilize the situation. As the Japanese did not know whether Zhang Zuoling was dead, they did not dare to act rashly. It was not until Zhang Xueliang secretly returned to Shenyang that Zhang Zuoling's death was announced on June 21st. Zhang Xueliang, the eldest son of Zhang Zuoling, was born in 1901. In March 1990, he studied at the Northeast Army Lecture Hall and after graduation rose steadily through the ranks. He performed excellently in wars against other warlords, accumulating considerable prestige in the army. After the Huanggutun incident, he was supported by the elders of Fengtian clique as leader, assuming the position of Commander-in-Chief of the Northeast Army. In December 1928, despite obstruction from Japan and pro-Japanese factions, he announced the Northeast flag replacement, submitting to the Nanjing nationalist government, thereby achieving China's formal unification. In 1929, a railway within Northeast China sparked a conflict between China and the Soviet Union. The Chinese Eastern Railway was a railway built by Tsarist Russia in the three northeastern provinces, running from Manzhouli to Suifenhe, connecting at both ends to the Trans-Siberian Railway. The southern branch ran from Harbin via Changchun to Dalian. After the Russo-Japanese War, the South Manchuria Railway from Changchun to Dalian was seized by Japan, where the CER remained under Tsarist Russia control. After the October Revolution in 1920, the Soviet Union demanded joint Sino-Soviet management and a new treaty. Thereafter, although nominally under joint management, actual control of the CER remained in Soviet hands. In view of this, Zhang Xueliang repeatedly sought to recover sovereignty over the CER. In March 1929, Zhang Xueliang attempted negotiations with Soviet side, and they didn't get positive results. On July 11th, Zhang Jinghui, the chief executive of the Eastern Special District, acting on Zhang Xueliang's orders, forcibly took over the CER by military force, dismissed all Soviet staff, expelled Soviet personnel, and dissolved the railway union. On July 17th, the Soviet Union announced a severance of diplomatic relations with China. On July 20th, the nationalist government issued a foreign policy statement, recalling its ambassador and consuls from the Soviet Union. On August 16th, Zhang Xueliang issued a mobilization order, deploying 60,000 soldiers to defend. By then, Soviet Far Eastern Military District had also mobilized 100 Red Army troops, massing them on the Sino-Soviet border. In mid-October, the Soviet Army launched an attack. Once fighting began, the Northeast Army suffered heavy casualties, 8,000 soldiers captured, and the Heilongjiang Railway flotilla destroyed. Concurrently, Japanese forces increased troops in Changchun and held live fire exercises. On November 26, Zhang Xueliang telegraphed the Soviet government, expressing full acceptance of Soviet conditions. the CER would revert to its pre-conflict status. The principle of joint management would be respected, and the arrested Soviet personnel would be released. On December 22, Zhang Xueliang was forced to sign the Khabarovsk Protocol, ending the Sino-Soviet border war. This incident was a significant blow to Zhang Xueliang, leading him to the flawed logic. The Northeast Army cannot defeat the Soviet Army, and the Japanese Army once defeated the Russian Army. Therefore, the Northeast Army is even less a match for the Japanese Army. This greatly influenced his strategic decisions in subsequent events. On April 16, 1931, Hao Yongde, manager of Wanbaoshan Village Paddy Field Company in Changchun, Jilin, fraudulently obtained land from 12 farmers near Wanbaoshan Village without government approval, and illegally subleased it to 188 Korean immigrants to grow rice. These Koreans dug irrigation channels, diverted water, and built dams, infringing on the interests of local farmers. The local farmers collectively opposed this and petitioned local authorities. The Jilin provincial government ordered the Korean immigrants to leave. However, Shigenori Tashino, the Japanese consul in Changchun, dispatched Japanese police to prevent Koreans from leaving and set a deadline of July 5, 1931, for completing the channel. On July 1st, Chinese farmers angrily filled in the channel and destroyed the dam. Japanese police, under the pretext of protecting their nationals, opened fire, killing and wounding dozens of Chinese farmers, creating a bloody incident. In June 1931, Japanese Guangdong Army Captain Shintaro Nakamura and some other Japanese were conducting military service in the southern area of Great Xin'an Mountains. They were discovered and detained by Dong Kunwu, deputy regimental commander of the 3rd Regiment of Northeast Army's Xin'an Reclamation Office. With conclusive evidence, Regimental Commander Guan Yuhen ordered the secret execution of Shintaro Nakamura. Japan seized the opportunity to claim that Northeast Army soldiers killed Nakamura for robbery and murder, pressuring China to hand over Guan Yuhen and fanning flames among Japanese public, using the Nakamura incident and the Wanbaoshan incident to falsely accuse China of harming Japanese and Korean immigrants. Despite repeated Japanese provocation in the Wanbaoshan and the Nakamura incidents, Zhang Xueliang issued order on September 6, 1931. Currently, Japan's foreign policy toward us is becoming more aggressive. In dealing with everything, we must be extremely careful and stable. No matter how the Japanese provoke, we must exercise utmost tolerance and must not resist, to avoid creating incidents. This remained the stance until the night of September 18th. On the evening of September 18, 1931, around 10 p.m., 4th Lieutenant Suemori Kawamoto of Kawashima Battalion, Shimamoto Brigade of Japanese Guangdong Army, led several soldiers to blow up a section of track on the South Manchuria Railway near Liutiaohu, about 800 meters south of the Beida'ing barracks in Shenyang. The Japanese staged a false scene, placing 3 bodies dressed in Chinese soldier uniforms, falsely accusing the Chinese army of destroying the railway. Subsequently, Japanese forces began attacking Chinese troops stationed in Shenyang, and so began this calamity that lasted 14 years and brought untold suffering to people worldwide.